Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Ryan McElveen. He is a member of the Fairfax County School Board, at-large member, and I'm going to ask him tonight a few things about what has been happening this past year in Fairfax County Public Schools. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Catherine. It's always such a delight to be on this program with you.
Well, I tell you, 7 years, in fact, I feel like 7 years ago today. But that's actually when you were on my radar. It was June of 2011, and I saw an interview in the Reston Patch where you said you wanted to run for school board, and at the time you were 25 years old.
That's right.
Right? And I was so impressed with your interview. I'm like, this is the young man whose voice needs to be heard on the school board. And 7 years have passed, and I have to say right up front that I could not be more proud of the job that you have done and what you have brought to this school board.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's really because of citizens and people like you that have really empowered us on the school board to do good work.
Well, I think we have done good work, and I think that you, more than anyone, recognizes, being the 10th largest school district, that we have a lot of leadership opportunities in some of the issues that we've taken on. You know, explain a little bit about what some of the marquee issues have been this past year.
So, you know, being right next to the federal government in Washington, D.C., we do have the opportunity to be a national leader. And we also, being the 10th largest school district in the nation, that gives us some power as well. So, you know, as a board member, I look back on the past several years as being really transformative, not just for Fairfax, but for education around the country. And some of the issues we've dealt with have been marquee issues. You know, they've made the news. Not everything makes the news that we do. But, you know, we've dealt with our non-discrimination policy, which was a big deal back in 2015.
Yes, it was.
This past year, we've had to deal with gun violence prevention once again. And more recently, we've dealt with other changes to our FLE curriculum and our dress code. And those, I think, have the potential to have national impact as well.
And so some of these issues that come up, they come from a variety of different sources, right? You know, you have explained at the school board meeting, like with the dress code policy, that you heard from a lot of students about that directly. And then you have a student member of the council as well, who is a liaison with students from the schools around the county. So this is not something that popped into your head. Explain a little bit about how issues bubble up from the surface, where they come from.
Sure. So let's start with the dress code, since that's fresh in our minds. So for the public that's listening that doesn't know about this, what this issue entails, over the years, while I've been on the school board, and even before then, I've heard quite a number of concerns from students, particularly females, that they are not treated equally under the dress code. And a lot of provisions in our dress code actually call them out, refer to cleavage, midriffs, blouses and things like that are really targeted at women. And so that's obviously not fair in this age of where we're re-examining our institutions to see how they perpetuate harassment and things like that. It's important to examine these things. And so, you know, just looking back on the kind of feedback I've gotten from female students in particular over the past 7 years on the school board, it's one of the issues that's consistently risen to the top. And I felt this was a good time to deal with it. You know, it's built within our Student Rights and Responsibilities program, which we pass every year. But I think it was an important statement to make now, and I hope that other districts will learn from that example.
You know, and I think that's important because, you know, when you talk about a more gender-neutral dress code, that is reflective of the march in making all of our language more accessible, and having a non-discriminating language used in the family life education, something that, you know, acknowledges, first and foremost, we're all human beings. Let's start there. And you're right, let's examine what perpetuates institutional bias. And I can remember reading stories about, you know, little girls in sundresses being sent home because of bare shoulders. And I'm thinking, why are we doing this to a 6-year-old? Right. It makes no sense, and yet that's the policy. So another interesting fact about that, before the show started, we were talking about the graduation robes and the fact the new superintendent in Richmond City has said he wants gender-neutral graduation robes because historically, in a lot of school systems, women wear white robes. You know, and I have my own thing about why women are always like put in white. You know, that's just a weird thing to me. And
Victorian era.
you know, something. But
Right.
but you know, nobody ever examines like why a white wedding dress and, you know, confirmation dresses, and it just seems like your whole life people are sticking you in a white dress for their own reasons, and I'm just more of a should ask why. But anyway, back to what Fairfax County has done. That's something you have addressed already.
Right. So in Fairfax, a couple years ago, we still had schools graduating with women in one robe color and men in a different color. And so when we adopted that non-discrimination policy change to recognize gender identity, that really kind of propelled movement on a lot of fronts. One of them was the graduation robe issue. And so, you know, I graduated from Marshall High School, and it's the crimson red and Columbia blue. And so the women used to wear the blue, the men used to wear the red. And so it was a bit of a cultural shift for Marshall, just as one example, but they were able to create robes that have red stripes on them with beautiful Columbia blue. So everyone's happy.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So sometimes just making a small change has a big impact.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Marshall High School. You are a graduate of Marshall 2004. You went
right.
and you were an activist and an advocate there. Like you really honed your activist chops at Marshall.
Right. So at Marshall High School, way back in the day, I was my class president. But the issue that I was most passionate about, which has a way of reappearing throughout my life, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, is the issue of bathrooms and privacy. And so at the time at Marshall High School, and many schools,
high schools, because I remember it well.
Right, many schools throughout the county, they didn't have stall doors, and one of the in the men's bathrooms. One of the concerns was kids would go into the bathrooms and smoke, and so we shouldn't give students privacy while they're in the restroom because of that. And so that was an issue that I petitioned about, and we were eventually able to make some changes in the county as a result of that. But, you know, funny enough, you know, the issues of bathrooms and privacy continue to this day.
Yes, now it's just who can use which one and that
right.
sort of thing.
Yeah. But, you know, I did kind of hone my advocacy there and at the University of Virginia, where I was really passionate about internationalizing education. You know, really a Western, white-dominated institution like the University of Virginia, the curriculum was very Western-focused, and so there weren't foreign languages. There weren't many foreign languages. There weren't non-Western perspectives in a lot of the curriculum, and so that was an issue that I really focused on, and really that's what propelled me to be active and interested in education policy.
And that also rolled into your career too, because your degree from UVA is in anthropology and East Asian studies, correct?
That's right. And so my day job is at the Brookings Institution. I'm the associate director of the China Center there, and so I do work on researching about Chinese leadership, and so it's a totally different side of my life.
It is, but I mean, obviously born out of this idea that we should have something besides a Western perspective at our major universities.
Right, absolutely. And you know, that leads to another thing that many people don't realize, that school board members do have day jobs. This is not, while the work itself entails full-time responsibilities, it is not a full-time job, and it won't pay the bills. So,
right,
yeah.
but the amount of time invested, I will admit that I was clueless until I got to know members of the school board, because a lot of people are like, oh, run for your school board, as if it's some small entry-level political job, some little job you should do. And I'm like, holy cow, there are work sessions. Like today you had an all-day work session. You have meetings, you have work sessions in the evening. You know, the amount of time that is necessary for the school board, at least for Fairfax County, to me is astonishing, the amount of time that is invested in this.
Absolutely. We're out just about every night of the week, on weekends, going to events. And so, you know, it's I will say the non-meeting parts are what makes it rewarding. It's going to graduations.
Right.
I just attended 24 graduations. I took a week off of work to do that. And so, but that's really the most wonderful thing, to see 13,000 plus kids walk across that stage and go off to other stages of their lives.
And a lot of students recognize you. I mean, you have been active in the school. I know you You advocated for like healthier foods in cafeterias, and you opened a salad bar. Was that at Marshall?
So yeah, we've done an extensive amount of work on school food during my tenure, and that's probably my most the achievement about which I'm most proud. When we got on the board, there was just a institutional push for not as much focus on healthy and fresh food. At the same time, there was an advocacy group forming called Real Food for Kids that really wanted to partner with the school system. And as a result of that effort, we now are able to have salad bars being spread to all of our elementary schools. And that's 140 schools. It's incredible. We have a new food and nutrition services director who's really passionate.
Oh, he's renowned. I've heard him speak.
Yeah,
he was
Rodney Taylor.
Yeah, he's a real get. I think he came from California, didn't
absolutely,
he? Los Angeles.
So he was Riverside School District.
Yeah.
And, so he's been a wonderful addition, and it's so nice as a school board when you've advocated for something and you can finally find the right person to implement that vision, and you can kind of step back and watch it be realized.
And healthy food is important because what we put into our bodies is wellness. When you eat nutritious foods and you have enough of it, you maintain wellness. And I think our school, I believe now that the number is 48 Title I elementary schools in Fairfax County right now.
That's right.
So some school children, the only meals they're getting really are at school. Absolutely. And some of them are getting breakfast and lunch. Right. And so, this focus on real food for kids, to me, I'm with you in having elevated that. And is there a plan to just continue to scale that in the county?
Oh, absolutely. We're continuing to work. One of the things we're also very proud of is our summer feeding program, which will kick off later this week. And what that entails is we have locations around the county where students under the age of 18 can go and get a free meal every day for lunch during the week. For parents or community members, it's $2 a person. But these are full meals for lunch, just to ensure that our students get that kind of nutrition during the summer when our school doors are closed.
And how are you going to promote that? How would people find the various locations where they're doing that?
So I'll be happy to post it online. We have it on our website as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we will make sure that we get that out too online when we post this show. Mm-hmm. So the feeding centers, I think, are very important because people forget over the summertime. I sit on the board of Bright Paths. We actually do the Food for Thought program where we send food home on the weekends. Mm-hmm. So without school and without the school nutrition program, a lot of kids would simply go hungry, which is astonishing to think about in such a wealthy county as Fairfax County. So when we come back from this break, we are going to continue to talk with Ryan McElveen. Ryan has been a school board member for 7 years. He's an at-large candidate. Not candidate, he's a member of the school board, but he represents a county of over 1 million people by being at-large. And so think about any questions you have. You can post questions to our YouTube. You can certainly send them out to Twitter, but we'll try to answer as many questions as we can while we have Ryan McElveen here in our studio. So please join us after the break.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. We have a lot of great books here today. There's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. We are talking with Ryan McElveen, who is an at-large member of the Fairfax County School Board. Thank you for being here, Ryan.
Thank you, Catherine.
So I went to the last school board meeting. I don't often go to school board meetings, but I went to the last school board meeting. And actually, it was a jam-packed evening. But one of the things that impressed me the most was what you had to say about your student representative. It was her last meeting. And as I had probably seen her in a previous meeting this year, but she is an impressive person in her own right. She really is. But explain why you have a student representative there on the school board. Why even have that position?
So, Catherine, that's a question we often get in Fairfax County, because very few districts around the country have student representatives. And Fairfax has had a student representative now for 43 years.
Wow.
We were one of the first in the country to do that. And the reason is we need that perspective. We, the board members, the school staff, we need to hear constantly from our students. And while one person cannot possibly represent all students, they certainly are able to provide some perspective and shed some light on important issues. We've always been lucky to have very impressive student representatives from different parts of the county, and so they really teach us more than we could know just from our own perspectives.
Well, right, because they're a student themselves. And when you are a product of Fairfax County Public Schools, which is one of the things I thought was very beneficial the first time you ran for office. It's kind of like, I have been there fairly recently, so what I'm bringing is a mature perspective with very recent relevant experience. Mm-hmm. So how is the student representative chosen? I mean, if you've got 190,000 students, it must be a fairly competitive process to choose the representative.
I will tell you, it's become increasingly competitive over the years. And so Fairfax County has what's called its Student Advisory Council. And that group is made up of 5 students from every school around the county. And so those students are sent to a monthly gathering, and they are able to provide the school system with feedback on various issues. But once a year they do gather, and they are the chosen ones to elect the student representative. So essentially each school gets about 4 or 5 votes in that process. And one of the things we often hear about is making it even more democratic and allowing students, all students, to vote in the system. And that's something we could certainly look at for the future. But for now, it's indirect election of the student representative.
And, that's kind of interesting, because as you pointed out, there's 190,000 students. Some of them are very young. You could limit it to the high school students. It seems to me the method you have works pretty well.
It does.
And it seems to me that you've tried to have diversity of perspective geographically, gender-wise. I remember when Ben Press was your student representative. You really have. When you say you've had some outstanding young people, you have had some outstanding young people who will go on to do, I can't even imagine what. But this only goes to highlight too, Fairfax County is such a large school system, and you were talking about the fact that you have a day job, because being a school board member is not a full-time job, but we have a staff that actually it is their full-time job to help run the county school system. And so when you go to the meetings, you see these mysterious people sitting over to the left, and oftentimes questions are directed at them. So give us a little bit of background and perspective on what some of those people are doing.
Right, so when you go to school board meetings, there is a platform off to the left side if you're in the audience, and those are our professional Fairfax County Public Schools staff. They are what often are referred to as central office staff. And so they are the ones that are the subject matter experts. Many of them have risen from the role of teacher, principal, into their positions. So they also have on-the-ground experience, and they're able to apply that at a higher level. And they are forced to deal with a school board that often has many strong opinions, and be able to support the school board in what it desires to do. And of course, the superintendent serves as the head of all of those staff members. But one of the things people don't realize is that the school board is the governing body. We do hire the superintendent, and that is our number one job, is to ensure that we have an effective superintendent who is doing the work of the school system.
You know, it reminds me of its own little municipal government. The way you go and I live in Fairfax City, we vote for city council members, but sitting off to the side is your city manager and your city attorney and all of these, planners and transportation people and people who are like, no, this is my day job.
Right.
And so it's interesting to me too to see the kinds of questions that are asked of the staff, because they do know more about the particulars of the policies, particulars of budgets, and all kinds of things that as a school board member there's no way you could keep that in your head.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about facilities. Now that's not a very sexy subject, but I thought because on your Facebook page you post videos, which I think are really very helpful, because they're a snapshot of things that you've talked about, decisions that have been made, and you can sit and watch something for 5 minutes and get a really good idea of what happened. So with the facilities, we have a real problem with trailers. In fact, I would say if there's a hot button for parents across this county, it's their children being in trailers. And so explain a little bit to us about that issue and what you're proposing.
So for many, many years, the Fairfax County Public Schools capital budget has been very far underfunded. And as a result, we're now on we're at about a 37-year replacement cycle for schools. In some cases, it's 50 years. And that has been really detrimental to the student experience. And educators having to use outdated facilities, labs, things like that. It's just not where we want our students to be learning. And so as a school board, it is our job to advocate to the county, who does the Board of Supervisors, who sets our bonding authority levels. And so we have this past year successfully advocated for an additional $25 million to our bond funding. But currently, we're allocated $155 million a year. In order to fully meet our needs, we would need $275 million a year.
Wow,
for
that is
capital
a
funding.
huge gap.
And that would be for the 25-year replacement cycle. And so, as a result of that huge gap, we have so many of our kids in trailers, and it's something that we tried to work with. We have demographers on staff to track birth rates and things like that. But you can never fully get everything right? And
you can't. It's hard to predict where people are going to move. Think about the metro stations and how that's going, and high density housing.
Right.
And things like that you're like, how can you possibly keep your finger on the pulse of where every project is going up that might dramatically increase the number of children attending a particular school district? So you have to have some flexibility.
Right, and we'll go back to Marshall High School as an example. We just finished renovating it a couple years ago, and now it's already over capacity at more than 2,000 students. And so as we look to the Tyson's redevelopment, as we look to the Silver Line corridor, we really have to pay close attention as to the density and where people are moving. Currently for Tyson's Corner, for example, we have one vertical school planned there. You'll remember the Bailey's Upper Elementary School was our first vertical school. It's been a rousing success in terms of design, but we're going to be seeing more and more of those kind of designs as Fairfax County develops.
And that makes sense, right? Because land is at a premium. And so when you think about some of the sprawling campuses of yesteryear, it's not going to be as practical going forward in areas with high density populations. So trying to get your arms around that means that people have to expect that you've got to fund all of this. Now, recently we had a meals tax that was on the ballot that I think was wholly misunderstood, and it was defeated. And so people don't want kids in trailers, and there's all these things that people want, but where does the money come from? Because the Board of Supervisors isn't going to simply keep slapping tax increases on property, real property, and property owners. Jerry Connolly famously said that they should have called that tax the property tax relief bill. That if we'd called it the property tax relief bill, that more people would have voted for it, right? But instead it was called the meals tax. So explain a little bit about what your options are as far as where is more revenue going to come from.
So the school system really has three major funding sources. One is the Board of Supervisors through local taxes, the state government through state taxes, and also federal government through grants and things like that. So, you know, our sources are very limited. I think all of us would agree that we need to diversify our tax base so we are not constantly going back to property owners for more money. And the meals tax was one way to do that. There are probably others as well. But until the state government gives us the authority to do that, cities have the authority, but counties don't.
Oh, I know, because Richmond City just passed guess what? A meals tax.
That's right.
And guess who supported it? Their chambers of commerce.
Right.
Surprise.
And so for counties, those meals taxes have to be brought forward in the year prior to a board election. And so that puts political pressure on people running for office, and they make it difficult for counties all the way around.
And that's the Dillon Rule. And a couple times on the show, we remind people of, that the Dillon Rule just treats counties and cities differently. And that's what we operate under. Hopefully one of these days that will just be some relic of history that no one even remembers what it is anymore, but it's what we have to work with right now, and it makes it extremely difficult. So does being hemmed in by Arlington County, DC, Alexandria, and other school systems that pay their teachers more.
Right. And so teacher pay is something that we've had a laser focus on for the past few years. We're on a current plan within 5 years to bring us at or above the regional average in terms of teacher pay. We're in year 3 of that plan, and we're really excited going into this next year that we're able to fully fund our teacher salaries. So we will bring up the salary line more in line, particularly for middle years teachers, mid-career teachers. But it's something we will continue to push for, and because we realize that attracting teachers not only at the beginning of their careers but throughout their careers is critical. We put all this money into training them. We want to make sure they stay with us.
And do you have, I'm assuming that part of what the school board staff does for you is track things like churn at the bottom. It seems to me that you have a lot of people coming in and leaving. Not as many veteran teachers, at least that's my perception, that we have a lot of 20-something young women who are like staffing our elementary schools, and that's pretty constant.
Right. And so we are constantly looking at the 5-year retention rate, so how many teachers come in and leave the system in that time, and that's able to give us an idea about what we need to do to continue to attract high-quality talent.
And what about Medicaid expansion? When I had Delegate Patrick Hope on here, he was saying that that's one of the things that gave them more money was for state employees and teachers.
Well, we have heard that there are millions of dollars coming our way. We have yet to see that, but
so that won't be immediate either. I know, like Medicaid is wait, it's going to be January, but so you're saying that money might be coming?
Yes, we've heard that money might be coming, and we're pleased with that because it'll go directly to our employees and the well-being of our students.
Right, and I think in years past too, we have not fully filled every teaching position we had open at Fairfax County?
So we're getting better in terms of recruiting. 2 years ago, we came into the school year with 200 vacancies. This past year, we had many fewer.
Okay, so less than 200 vacancies.
Right.
And when we come back from this break, we're going to talk some more with Ryan McElveen, who is on the Fairfax County School Board, about some of the things that he is working on now and some of the things that we need to be thinking about in the future for our school system. Join us after the break.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight I'm talking with Ryan McElveen. He is on the Fairfax County School Board. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Catherine.
So let's talk a little bit about social media. That's actually my background. When I met you, I was actually doing social media consulting. That was a long time ago when a lot of people didn't really know what it was or why anyone should care.
Unfortunately, now too many people know how to use it.
Too many people. Like, I can remember telling particularly political candidates that they should be using Twitter, and Mark Keem said, Twitter is the stupidest thing. And you know something? I still think it's kind of stupid, but everybody's there. And that's the whole point, isn't it?
Right.
So,
although you might regret telling some political candidates.
I know, right? We need to shut it down for some people. But you know, you brought a knowledge of these communication tools at a time when the school board and members of the school board had not embraced them because it was not something that they had used, right? I mean, you were younger. You had come out of college and out of graduate school. And so you knew that people were online and on Facebook and using these tools. But it's more than just using it for frivolous reasons.
Right.
I mean, you could have used it for frivolous reasons, but you didn't. But explain to us, all of us, how this has really been a great organizing and communication tool for really important issues.
Well, so in Fairfax County, where we have a populace of 1.1 million, it's important to be able to connect as directly as possible with that many people. And it's very difficult to hold one-on-one meetings or go out in the community
with every person
and have a town hall to which everyone can attend. And so Twitter and Facebook and all that has been a great way to easily get quick feedback from lots of constituents. And obviously the most powerful and most connected group of constituents has been our students and our younger constituents. And so from them, they've been able to provide feedback on so many issues that we've dealt with. And they've been really the champions on a lot of the major issues we've dealt with. You know, the gender identity issue is one. You know, younger people are much more open to
very much so.
Those issues. Dress code, obviously, is another one. Perhaps the most prominent use of social media among youth recently has been the campaign against gun violence. And so, you know, we're on the school board, we're very proud of our students for standing up and taking a stand. We've done what we can as a school board to really push back on federal officials who don't see it as a issue they can tackle. We believe they must tackle it for the benefit of all of our students. And at the local level, there's only so much we can do with that issue. You know, we've just come out of a meeting where we were discussing our improvements to safety and security procedures. We're going to be looking at ensuring all doors have two-sided locks. You can lock from inside, looking at having security cameras in all major areas of schools. But again, there's only so much we can do, and it's up to that next generation, to the youth, to really push that issue and make sure our officials at the state and federal governments hear about that critical issue.
So social media it's always been an organizing tool. It goes all the way back to Arab Spring, and people are like, how did Arab Spring happen? It happened because of platforms like Twitter. And you're right, students can come together, not just in their own school or even in this county, but the Parkland students are now on a tour this summer to go to a lot of different communities. So that communication is with your school board member, it is with like-minded people, it's with your peers, and it's with a national movement.
Right.
And I think one of the remarks that you made at the school board meeting was about supporting these young people in their advocacy. You know, supporting their First Amendment rights, supporting them and going out and doing something about issues that matter to them the most.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the things that has made Fairfax County's response to this advocacy unique. You know, you'll see horror stories in Texas and North Carolina of school districts really shutting the kids down, forcing them to stay inside the schools. And first of all, I don't think that's legal. I mean, students have rights to free expression. You know, the Supreme Court
right.
Decided that in Tinker versus Des Moines, right? And so we, as a school system, we have that legal base for allowing students to express themselves, but we do see them as the next leaders, future leaders of our country, and we need to do what we can to foster responsible leadership. And what we've seen in the walkouts that took place this year is an incredibly responsible group of students. I went as a bystander to see how, to Hayfield Secondary School on the day of the national walkout. And it was incredible how the students had really put so much effort into organizing a productive and calm ceremony that really brought the issues to light.
Well, you know, I find it interesting, and this is, you know, I'm a baby boomer, and boomers still run the world. That's just the way it is. And often we neglect to try to understand the perspective of students who have lived their entire lives, because Columbine was 20 years ago, their entire lives with the threat of gun violence in their school, and it's been normalized. All the lockdown drills and all of the metal detectors and the things we've done to our schools has basically normalized gun violence. And boomers don't really experience it that way because we didn't experience it at all as young people. And that's the other great divide, the great gap, where the people in charge, it seems to me, need to listen a little more carefully to a very valid lived experience of these young people.
Absolutely, and we have to do what we can to secure our schools without militarizing them. So without, you know, we've looked at options of putting magnetometers in schools, we've looked at options of arming teachers.
But that's what you do in a prison. Can I just say, can we kind of look at the parallel between how you operate a prison and what is happening in our schools and saying, how is this a good quality of life?
Right. So you have to maintain that sense of community and peacefulness that really is what fosters a productive educational environment. And so that's the fine line we're trying to draw in Fairfax and other communities. Going back to the social media issue, though, you know, and what the Parkland students have really done, and what we see our students doing at a local level. The anecdote I always like to use for our students is that back in 2015, when we had the major snowstorm that resulted in the Close FCPS movement, that was a moment when our students really shined, for better or worse, and they really brought attention to an issue that they were passionate about, and they trended #2 worldwide. So that just shows how powerful they can be if they put their minds to it and rally around a cause. And so it would be great to see that kind of advocacy on gun violence prevention and other issues as well.
And not just closing the schools for
That's
snow.
right. Yeah.
But you really have made a name, and you've become a meme. You know, there's a funny meme going around about Tim Kaine as a dad joke, but you were like a meme way before Tim Kaine could figure out what that was.
And before Tim Kaine ran for the vice presidency, I had more Twitter followers than he did.
That's right.
But he did surpass me. So.
But it's an interesting thing because I see that as a positive too. You know, everywhere you go, students recognize you, and they really think you. They're like they do selfies with you. You're like this person they look up to, and isn't that kind of what you want? As an elected local leader, and your constituents are certainly parents, but your constituents are students too. And the fact that they can connect with you in that way, to me, I think is remarkable. I don't know anybody else or any other school board members who are like mobbed when they go to like, oh, hey, Pat, Il-Young, come over here, selfie. But you fostered a different relationship. I think social media did make that easier to do.
Absolutely, and it's something that we hadn't seen before I got on the school board, and I'm hopeful going forward, even long past my time on the school board, that kind of special relationship will continue.
Well, it's just another communications channel.
Right.
I mean, when I was in school, we didn't even have email, right? You wanted to organize somebody, you put posters in the hallway, or you mimeographed something and you handed it out in the lunchroom. I mean, now it's just so instant, and people truly feel so much more connected when they're connected online. And I don't know what the next iteration of communication will be. You know, maybe Twitter will go the distance, or maybe it'll be something else. But I think young people, you know, these are the leadership skills we want them to have too. Back to your point about how they conducted themselves in the walkouts. You know, we put a lot of emphasis on leadership skills in our curriculum. I mean, in the county, and a lot of that is the nature of who lives in the county. The kinds of parents you have in the county, that a lot of emphasis is put on leadership skills. And I think that when students then try to show that they have them, we should not be shutting them down.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, as a school board, that's something we've tried to foster. We have a student leadership program that we run every year that tries to build those kind of skills, teach them about how a school board works, so that they could eventually grow into the position of student representative, going back to that. And you know, it's incredible to see the kind of talent we have in our schools, and just what the future leaders are going to bring. They're going to be so much more powerful advocates than we have ever been.
But part of this too is closing the gap, because there's still disparities within our county. Like I said, we have 48 Title I elementary schools, and not everything can be solved in the classroom, and not everything can be solved with policy. You know, I'm a great advocate for community schools. I will continue to talk about this on every show until we start to have some. But I understand from Karen Corbett Sanders, we actually are starting to look at community-based partnerships in a more formalized way coming this year, and that's really what community schools are. It's wraparound services, it's coordinating through the school system, and I really think that it would benefit Fairfax County a lot, and the school board seems to be open to doing this kind of collaboration and having these partnerships.
The school board is open to these partnerships, and we've been experimenting in the Mount Vernon area and the Herndon area, and so I think we've seen some good results, and we're going to keep experimenting as best we can to make it work.
Yeah, well, so in Grand Involve, I work with that program. We put retired seniors into the classrooms of Title I elementary schools, including in Herndon, and most of our schools are in Mount Vernon as well. And to me, I've always called that a gateway program for community schools, because you're taking a resource, retired people, and you're allocating them to the places where they're needed the most. And it's a win-win, both for the young people and for our retired seniors. And we are certainly rich in resources of every kind here in the city. I do want to talk about, we don't have enough time to talk about it fully before we go to break, but I do want you to think about in our next segment about the impact of some of the things like affordable housing and transportation on our teachers. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about, it's not just paying our teachers more, but we've got issues in the county that impact the people who work in our schools, and whether they can even afford to live in the communities where they're teaching in our schools.
Well, you know, that's such a critical issue. It's something we've been looking at for a while. You know, some school districts actually have glorified dorms for teachers, for younger teachers who want that option, so that they could live in the community very cheaply and work there. And we do have a lot of teachers that commute from Loudoun and points even further west.
I know.
And you know, we are losing them, you know, when we can't keep our pay at the same levels as surrounding jurisdictions. So it's something we are keenly focused on, and we are, all members of our board are passionate about paying our teachers more.
I know, you know, and that points too to the close collaboration between the school board and the board of supervisors, because some things you rely on the board of supervisors to fix, because it's not within the purview of the school board to do anything except maybe about pay. It's certainly not about transportation and affordable housing. So when we return from our break, we will be chatting again with Ryan McElveen. He is an at-large member of the Fairfax County School Board and has been for the last 7 years. We look forward to picking his brain just a little bit more, so please join us after this break.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, read your lease. No pets allowed. My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
I dare you. I dare you to change the world. Yeah, you. Getting that college education.
I dare you to be somebody important.
Like be a teacher. Or a reality TV star.
I dare you to stand up here.
To call the shots.
To be a role model.
An inspiration. An innovator.
To be a teacher.
Think you can change my life?
Make me excited about science like you.
Have a career that really means something?
Then do it.
I dare you.
They say you don't have to be so strong. But this is my mother, my purpose. Strength is not optional. See, I lift her now like she raised me then. So I know my strength is super, but I'm still human.
Oh, look who's here.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me is Ryan McElveen of the Fairfax County School Board. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. Very excited for our last segment.
I am too. So I want to just be totally truthful about the fact that my first school board meeting was years after my children graduated from school. And it was because Jay Frost invited me to a school board meeting where the foreign language education program in the elementary school was on the chopping block because of a budget shortfall. And I'm like, well, I am passionate about foreign language education in elementary school. I talk about it all the time. So me and a lot of other people showed up to that school board meeting. That was my first one. But actually, that has been saved. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you know, the people who show up for these meetings, the responsiveness of the school board and recognizing when there is an overwhelming community interest in something. And how you move forward. It might, I'm assuming, take more than 1 cycle, 2 cycles to actually get movement. But that the school board does listen, is responsive, does figure out ways to do these things or save these programs or have new ones.
Well, Catherine, you know, one of the things that we're fortunate about in Fairfax County is that we have had leadership that values these kind of programs over the years. Perennially, they have been on the chopping block. Things like foreign language education, music education, things that are, you know, really motivate our kids to come to school. And this is the first year in about 20 years that we've actually had a fully funded budget. Of course, this year, most of that money went to teacher salaries and bringing those up to scale. But at the same time, we didn't have to worry about having to cut programs. And so, you know, I'm personally very passionate about foreign language education and music education. And it's distressing to always see those as things that would likely be cut in other jurisdictions that aren't cut in Fairfax. In terms of foreign language, that's been something that I've really pushed on during my board tenure. We initiated what we called our Internationalization Task Force, which looked at creating more language opportunities, particularly at the younger levels for students, built into the curriculum. The vertical articulation of those programs, so from K all the way to 12, so that if you go to middle school and high school, you have those same language opportunities. And also opportunities to do things like study abroad programs and engage with local embassies and Fortune 500 companies that really have that international reach that we're lucky to have access to in Fairfax County. And so we continue to push forward on those issues. Obviously, with budget shortfalls, it's been difficult to really push out a lot of those things. But we continue to push for more language programs at our elementary schools, and we're hopeful that we'll get language in all 140 elementary schools. One of the things that makes that possible is about 3 or 4 years ago, we lengthened the Monday school day. You'll recall from your days as a mother.
Oh my gosh, finding daycare half days.
Half-day Mondays, right?
Yep,
and
yep.
so we had an opportunity to add curriculum in that time, and so foreign language, world languages was something that we've tried to push into that.
And some of that is your personal lived experience, because you took foreign language education, I believe, all the way from elementary, middle, and high school.
Well, yes, that's correct. I did take it at all levels, but mainly in college at the University of Virginia, and at grad school is when I focused on
Chinese,
really learning.
particularly.
Yeah, Chinese, and as you know, that's my day job. I lived in China for a couple of years. I go back almost once a month these days for my other job. But it just goes to show that, you know, our students come out and they do use these languages that we're teaching them, and it's critical. The board has a goal of all of our students graduating proficient in at least 2 languages, and I think we're getting better at making that a reality.
Well, I think when you talk about workforce readiness, you know, what do you call somebody who only speaks 1 language? An American, right? The rest of the world speaks more than 1 language, and so I think we have put our students behind the 8 ball when we're increasingly a global society, to have Americans go, well, no, everybody just needs to speak English and that's it. We're disadvantaging companies that need people to have multiple language skills. Mm-hmm. And while children are learning their own basic native language, they can be learning other foreign languages easier when you're little to learn to think in 2 different languages. And an example is your daughter, Sierra.
That's right, yes. So at home we're teaching Sierra Chinese and English. Currently she speaks Chinese, so anyway, it's good practice for me to speak to her in Chinese. But yeah, it's you know, a great learning experience.
And she's going to be 2 in the fall, right?
That's right.
She'll be 2 in the fall. So you know, so you went through. So when you were elected to the school board, you were 25, not married, and childless, and now it's like you're a dad.
That's right.
And you're teaching your child 2 languages.
Right.
So see how life changes so quickly.
Right.
People don't foresee that. I worked with Decoding Dyslexia going back to 2015. And of course, they wanted more resources for dyslexia in the public schools. And actually, in that year, a specialist was hired in Fairfax County. And I know that group continues to work to get more resources focused on identifying really early students with dyslexia. And I think the school system has been very responsive to that.
Well, I will tell you that for many years we were not responsive, and because of advocacy from parents like those that have formed the group Decoding Dyslexia, we were able to make a change, and a change fairly quickly. So we now have implemented what's called our universal screener, so that and we have and that will screen kids at a young age to see their reading levels and other things, so that as they progress, we can actually better target resources to them as necessary. And we also have dyslexia specialists now, which is something we never had before.
Yeah, before, I know.
And I think, you know, what another thing that makes Fairfax County so unique is the wealth and depth of our focus on special education programs. You go to other districts in the country, you will not find anything.
You know, you're so right, and I want to talk about that because the Fairfax County Special Education PTA is fairly new, and I have talked to Diane Cooper Gould and Joanne Walton because they modeled it after the Arlington Special Education, which has been around for 7 years. So again, you know, Fairfax County, which leads on a lot of things, doesn't lead on everything for whatever reason, but you know, you get parent advocates on it, and then suddenly things start to happen. But still, there is a problem with meeting the needs of special education students who are being mainstreamed. And you go back to the boomer generation, I was not mainstreamed. Even my own children, who are 28, 30, and 32, were not mainstreamed with students who had intellectual or developmental disabilities. Well, it's a whole new world out there.
Right.
And it's a positive, wonderful thing that all of these students are together in our public school system.
Right.
But finding the right supports, hiring teachers, being able to pay special education teachers.
And the most beautiful thing is to go to these graduation ceremonies. Everyone graduates together. You have the special needs kids on the stage. You know, you have them winning class awards. You have them you have standing ovations when they cross the stage, and I think that just shows how far we've come.
I do too, because then they go on into the rest of their lives with people who don't think there's anything amiss about the fact there are people with differing abilities in their workplace.
Right.
I mean, this is something else I'm focused on. It's kind of like how, once we've graduated our special needs students, how do we get them into the workforce? Well, I think their peer group are going to be the people who bring them along. Like,
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't we have an inclusive workforce? Why wouldn't we have people in our workplace that have differing abilities? But I would say that of all the things I'm proud of with Fairfax County, being bold in that, I think is going to net so many wonderful results long term here in this county.
Right, and we have workforce training programs. You know, we have great community partners that take these kids in and teach them the skills they'll need to be fully functioning adults.
And we haven't even talked about the academy programs.
Right.
Right? Like
That's right.
that is
Yeah.
unique to Fairfax County as well. And I tell people about, you know, we are fortunate to have those because there are other counties that don't have those.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just explain a little bit about how those academies work.
Right, so in our county we have 8 academy programs, and so each one is a little different. Some are Governor's Health Academies, some are focused on communications and arts, but all of them have specialized curriculum that we could not afford to replicate in every single school, and that's why those models came about. But we do things like TV producing,
culinary arts.
Culinary arts. We have a new fire academy for kids that want to pursue
and
firefighting
you have performing
career.
arts too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and fashion.
So my daughter, one of my daughters was in fashion design, and the other one took musical theater. So that's how I know about the academy programs. But the kids can get on a bus and take a bus to another school, and that's how the system works.
Right. And you know, as we are entering the internet age, or well into the internet age now, we do have online course options, so that for things like foreign languages where we can't afford to teach languages at every school. And so, you know, we're trying to leverage those opportunities as best as possible, while recognizing that having a teacher in the classroom is the best method.
So financial literacy, the legislature several years ago, and I remember there was a big kind of outcry about that because like not another required class that's going to take away band or some other elective. But the answer really was offering the option to take that kind of financial literacy required for students to have online.
Right, and so we're right now in the midst of our summer registration for that, and many kids will be taking it online over the summer. And so, you know, we don't like those kind of unfunded mandates, but when we get them, we do the best we can, and of course, in the Fairfax way, we try and make it the best possible.
Well, it's interesting because in the Richmond City schools, my brother-in-law is with Union Bank, and Union Bank helps to offset the cost of providing that for the Richmond schools. And so that's another example too of public-private partnerships with the schools when you can find someone that says, yes, I realize it's an unfunded mandate, perhaps we can help.
And Fairfax is also unique because we have what's called Finance Park. So on the campus of Frost Middle and Woodson High School, we have a place where middle schoolers can go and learn about financial literacy as well.
I think that's fantastic. And I do understand why we need people coming out of schools that really have an idea of how credit works and finance works and how to manage their finances. I kind of agree with that, but you can't do everything in the public school system. But I think Fairfax County is doing an enormous amount. And it costs a lot of money, and the bus system, when you talk about just moving the kids around the county, I think at some point I heard that we have more buses than Greyhound.
That's correct, we do. We have something like 1,680 buses.
Right, and part of that is not just to and from school, it's also moving the kids around for the academy.
Right, we have 500 square miles, you know, so I mean, we have to get kids moved around some way.
Yeah, where they're going.
Right.
But you know, our school system is one of the reasons that companies move here. It is one of the reasons that people want to live here. It's one of the reasons that property values on homes are what they are, because people are like, what school district is it in?
Right. And the one thing I will add is that we are partnering with the Fairfax Connector buses to do free bus passes, right. And so hopefully we'll see our bus fleet on the downswing in the coming
Absolutely.
years.
And the other thing I love about that, because the Q bus system's doing that in Fairfax City, what I love about that is the fact that we're cultivating a new generation of public transportation users.
That's right, and we're going to need it as our county urbanizes.
Absolutely. With the Silver Line moving in, it's kind of like we need them on buses, bicycles, walking, taking the metro. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been very illuminating tonight.
Well, it's always so fun to be with you, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Join us next time here on Inside Scoop. This is the place to find out all the information that you need to know about what is going on in Northern Virginia and the Metro DC area.